I'm Dr. Rebecca Langston, a geriatric specialist. And if you're over 65 and feeling tired more often than usual, this story is especially for you. I've treated hundreds of patients who come in saying the same thing. I guess I'm just getting old. But fatigue, real, persistent, soul-deep fatigue, is rarely just aging. It's a message, a signal. And sometimes, it's the only warning you'll get before something more serious takes hold. Elaine was one of those patients. She came in quietly, a woman in her early 70s, graceful in posture but visibly worn down. She didn't complain, she never does. But she looked me in the eye and said, "I feel tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix." That moment stuck with me, because I knew it wasn't just about sleep, or age, or stress. It was something deeper, and I had to listen carefully to find it. If this story already feels familiar, if you've ever told yourself, it's probably nothing, please like this video and subscribe. Your support helps more people hear the quiet truths their bodies may be trying to tell them. Section 1, The Subtle Signs, When Normal Isn't Normal. Elaine returned for her follow-up just a week later. She looked tired, but also relieved. I asked gently how things had been. "I forget names," she said. "Birthdays, appointments, even where I left my keys." I know that sounds silly, but it's happening more and more. Forgetfulness affects nearly 22% of older adults, but in many cases, it's not just aging. It's a flag, especially when paired with other signs. She also admitted she hadn't been attending her bridge group. She just didn't feel like it. "It's too much effort," she said with a soft shrug. That wasn't laziness. That was emotional withdrawal, a quiet sign that fatigue was sinking deeper than the body. Mood changes, withdrawal, memory lapses, they come quietly, like fog rolling in, often unnoticed until visibility is gone. Have you ever blamed age for a feeling you couldn't explain, just because it was easier than asking what else it might be? Section 2, Tingling and Other Clues. What if your nerves are trying to talk to you? When Elaine returned the next week, she seemed hesitant, like there was more she wanted to say but wasn't sure how. As I asked her a few simple questions, she mentioned something she hadn't brought up before. "There's this strange tingling in my hands," she said, "and sometimes my feet, especially at night. It's not painful, just uncomfortable, like something isn't quite right." That caught my attention. Tingling, especially in both hands and feet, can be a subtle sign of nerve damage, often related to vitamin deficiencies like B12, or conditions like diabetes or hypothyroidism. I've seen too many seniors overlook these symptoms, dismissing them as sleeping funny or bad circulation. But our bodies speak in patterns. And when Elaine said she sometimes felt dizzy upon standing, it deepened my concern. These little discomforts might not seem dramatic, but they often point to something deeper. When they appear together, we conducted a few neurological reflex tests, simple ones, but telling. Her response times were slightly delayed, her grip weaker than average for her age. "I thought I was just out of shape," she said quietly, her eyes downcast. That sentence stuck with me, because I hear it far too often. She also mentioned something she thought might be unrelated. Her appetite had changed. She wasn't as hungry, meals didn't taste the same. And sometimes she skipped lunch without realizing it. Changes in appetite, energy, balance, and even skin sensitivity, these aren't isolated quirks. In geriatrics, they're whispers, pieces of a larger picture. The kind of clues that can be missed entirely unless someone's really paying attention. And that's what we did. We paid attention. Not because her symptoms were loud, but because they were subtle and consistent. When I asked if she'd experienced any numbness or burning, she shook her head. "Not yet," she said. That "yet" told me everything. She knew something wasn't right, even if she couldn't name it. So we moved forward with quiet urgency, blood work, nerve tests, a deeper look at what her body had been trying to say softly all along. Because sometimes the most important things aren't shouted. They're whispered day after day until someone finally listens. Section 3. Investigating further. When symptoms seem vague, clarity must become our mission. After our discussion, I knew it was time to move beyond guesswork. Elaine's constellation of symptoms, fatigue, memory issues, tingling, mood changes could no longer be dismissed as the byproducts of getting older. They formed a pattern, one I'd seen before. I explained to her that we needed a full panel of blood work, something more thorough than the usual annual checkup. We ordered tests to measure her vitamin B12 levels, thyroid function, folate, blood sugar, and a complete metabolic panel. "Why all of that?" she asked. "Because symptoms like yours don't come from nowhere," I explained gently. "And we're going to find out where they're coming from." Many older adults are surprised to learn how common nutritional deficiencies and hormonal imbalances are. About 20% of seniors have low vitamin B12 levels. Hypothyroidism affects nearly 17% of those over 60. These are not rare conditions. They're simply overlooked. What makes this tricky is that their symptoms often overlap fatigue, mental fog, emotional shifts, and nerve discomfort. When patients come in with multiple vague complaints, they're often treated as if it's all in their head. But it's not. Elaine listened carefully. Her eyes, once dimmed by resignation, now showed a flicker of hope. As we spoke, she shared something else. She'd been losing interest in food, had unexplained weight loss, and felt colder than colder than usual even in warm rooms. These were more subtle red flags pointing toward deeper causes. I ordered additional testing to assess iron levels, inflammation markers, and kidney function. While some might call it excessive, I call it responsible. In geriatrics, you must listen twice as hard because bodies speak more quietly with age. Before she left, Elaine turned and asked, "You really think we'll find something?" I smiled. "I think your body already knows. We just need to catch up to what it's been trying to say. Because medicine isn't just about treating illness. It's about decoding the story your body is quietly telling every day." Section 4. Unveiling the Truth. A week later, Elaine returned to hear the results. She sat in the same chair, but something about her posture was different, less resigned, more alert. Hope does that, even cautious hope. I opened her file and took a breath. "Elaine, your vitamin B12 levels are significantly low," I said gently. "That explains your fatigue, memory issues, mood changes, and even the tingling in your hands and feet." Her expression froze, then softened into disbelief. "Just that? All of this from that?" "Yes," I nodded. "It might seem small, but B12 is essential for your nervous system, your brain, and your blood. When it drops too low, it affects everything: energy, focus, emotions, even how your nerves function. Vitamin B12 deficiency affects around 20% of adults over 60, and yet it often goes undetected for years. Its symptoms mimic normal aging so closely that patients and even providers fail to question it." She leaned back, a visible wave of relief washing over her. But then she asked the question I hear so often: why didn't anyone notice before? Because B12 deficiency doesn't scream, it whispers. It masks itself in symptoms that seem explainable until they're not. That's why I always say, listen carefully to what seems subtle. It might be the most important thing your body is trying to tell you. Elaine's story was a perfect example. No dramatic onset, no flashing lights. Just a quiet slide into symptoms that were quietly stealing her. Vitality. We discussed next step supplements, dietary changes, and follow-up. As we wrapped up, Elaine smiled for the first time in weeks. "It feels good just to have an answer," she said. Did this surprise you? You're not alone. Leave a comment and share this story with someone you care about. It could change their life too. Section 5, Recovery and Renewal. We began treatment the very same day. Elaine started with weekly vitamin B12 injections, simple, quick, but incredibly powerful. The plan was to monitor her closely and follow up with oral supplements once her levels began to stabilize. For many patients, the effects of B12 repletion are subtle at first. But for Elaine, even the early changes felt meaningful. Within 2 weeks, her energy began to return. Not in a dramatic way, no sudden transformation. But she described it like a fog lifting, just enough to see clearly again. Her memory improved. Her hands tingled less. Her mood lightened. She laughed again, even joked during our third appointment. "It's like my body's been whispering for months," she said. And I finally listened. She also made small changes to her diet, adding more eggs, dairy, fortified cereals, and fish. Nothing extreme. Just intentional choices, supported by what her body needed. But perhaps the biggest shift was internal. She no longer felt helpless, she felt informed, in control. At our 3-month follow-up, Elaine arrived early, stood straighter, and wore a bright scarf that matched her energy. "I walked here today," she said proudly. "Didn't even think twice about it." Moments like that remind me why I do this work. She told me she had shared her story with friends at her church. One of them, another woman in her 70s, had been experiencing similar symptoms and was now scheduling her own tests. It was beautiful to see how Elaine's personal awakening had begun to ripple outward. Know someone who's been feeling worn down lately? Share this story. It could help them find the answer they've been waiting for. Section 6, Reflection and Encouragement. Elaine's journey reminded me of something I've seen again and again as a geriatric physician. The body whispers long before it shouts. Fatigue, forgetfulness, a change in mood, loss of appetite, tingling fingers. These are not just aging. They're signals often quiet, sometimes ignored, but always meaningful. What changed for Elaine wasn't just her health, it was her awareness, her willingness to listen. And it started with one simple truth. Just because I'm getting older doesn't mean I should feel worse. That sentence, that shift in thinking, changed everything. It allowed her to question, to act, and ultimately, to heal. I often encourage my patients to write down their symptoms, no matter how small they seem. Keep a journal. Talk about changes. Because when you document, you begin to connect dots. You start to see your body as a communicator, not just a vessel. Elaine now does that daily. She writes how she feels, tracks small HIFs, celebrates progress. Her journal, once just a notepad by her chair, has become a reflection of her strength. And here's what's most powerful. She's not keeping it to herself. Elaine now speaks at her community center, shares her story with others, and encourages fellow seniors to listen to their own quiet cues. We live in a world that praises youth and energy. But there is deep wisdom in slowing down, in paying attention, in honoring your body's quieter voice. You don't need to wait until something breaks to fix it. Sometimes healing begins with the decision to listen. And that's my encouragement to you, wherever you are, however old you are, whatever quiet signal you're receiving. Pause, reflect, act. If this story resonated with you, check out our video on why you shouldn't ignore muscle pain after 70. It might be the next whisper your body wants you to hear. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments. And if you haven't yet, consider subscribing. We share stories like Elaine's every week, real, hopeful, and quietly powerful.